Dawn, the Philippine Sea, 1944. The water lies flat and gray like a mirror scratched by salt and wind. From the bridge of a Japanese cruiser, officers watch the eastern horizon. At first, only faint dots, then dozens, then hundreds. The first sound doesn't come from the sky, but from within the ship itself. A low vibration, metal trembling like it's alive. Engines, hundreds of them. The officers lift their binoculars and the horizon turns to steel. Beyond the haze, massive silhouettes emerge. American carriers moving in perfect formation. On each deck, men and machines flow together in rhythm. Flags flicker, signal bells ring. Every 9 minutes, the sky fills again. They once believed courage could turn the tide of war. But today they see something else. War becoming a process, no longer fought by heroes, but by a machine that never stops breathing. November 1944. The Philippine Sea is flat and metallic, stretching into infinity, its surface trembling beneath the thin mist of salt. From the bridge of the cruiser, Maya, Japanese officers stand in silence, scanning the eastern horizon. No one speaks. They only watch and wait. At first, faint specks in the distance, then more. 10, 50, hundreds. The vibration begins deep within the ship, a hum that rattles every rivet. Engines, thousands of horsepower echoing through steel. A young officer lowers his binoculars, whispering, "Impossible." They're launching continuously. On the far edge of the horizon, the shapes become clear. Rows of aircraft rising in geometric precision. Beneath them, an entire armada emerges from the mist. 17 American carriers moving as one. Each deck looks alive. Men in colored shirts move like clockwork pieces. Bombs roll, fuel lines hiss, wings unfold in symmetry. From above, it doesn't look like war. It looks like a factory in motion. 9 minutes pass. Another wave takes off. The Japanese officer stares at his watch, his voice almost breaking. They fight like machines now. For the first time, he understands. War has become industrial. 2 years earlier, it was just an idea on paper. In 1940, while the world still believed battleships ruled the seas, a small group of American engineers met in a narrow Washington office, drafting a design that would redefine modern warfare. Their question was not how to build the strongest ship, but how to build many of them, faster than anyone could destroy. If war came to the Pacific, the United States would need something beyond courage or skill. It would need scale, a system that could multiply itself. From that concept, the Essex-Class was born. Not a masterpiece, but a product line. The blueprint carried a single note at the top margin. Perfection is less important than replacement. It was a philosophy Japan could never replicate. The Imperial Navy built its carriers like national treasures. Handcrafted, meticulously painted, symbols of Bushido and pride. America built its carriers like automobiles. Modular, standardized, replaceable. Within 6 months, the first steel plates were welded at Newport News. When Pearl Harbor was attacked in December 1941, the first USS Essex was still incomplete, but the process had already begun. The Americans had invented not just a ship, but a system of war production. June 1942, Midway. 4 of Japan's most powerful carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, vanish in smoke. The loss is not just military, it's existential. Each ship took nearly a decade to design and build. In the next 18 months, America launched 8 Essex-Class carriers. While Tokyo debated honor and vengeance, Detroit, Philadelphia, and San Diego worked through the night. Thousands of welders, engineers, and machinists built carriers like assembly line sedans. The word Essex stopped meaning a single ship. It became a model. Components from USS Intrepid fit perfectly into USS Hancock. A mechanical flaw found on Bunker Hill could be fixed across the fleet by radio in less than a day. It was a network before the digital age. Japan ran out of fuel. America turned its continent into a triangle of production: steel from Pittsburgh, engines from Detroit, aircraft from California. All of it converged on one purpose: feeding the heartbeat of Essex-Class. By early 1943, the Brooklyn Navy Yard burned with light through the night. Welding sparks fell like orange rain. A worker wiped sweat and oil from his face. He didn't know where Saipan was, or Leyte, or the Philippine Sea. He only knew every seam he welded might save a pilot he'd never meet. A short Navy memo from that year read simply, "Objective, 1 carrier every 20 days. No slogans, no speeches, just numbers." War had become measured in output per month. While Japan took years to construct Taiho, America laid the keels of 14 Essex-class ships simultaneously. The gap was no longer strategy, it was arithmetic. For every Japanese loss, 2 new American hulls took shape. By late 1944, 17 Essex-class carriers were active, more than the entire remaining Japanese fleet combined. But metal alone doesn't win wars. The Essex-class became unstoppable not just because of its steel, but because of the doctrine behind it. Before 1942, carriers were treated like lone predators. Strike once, retreat, and hide. Admiral Ernest J. King changed that forever. Cold, calculating, and often hated, he wrote, "No carrier shall fight alone. They will move as one heartbeat." Thus, Task Force 58 was born, the world's first fast carrier task force, commanded by Admiral Mark Mitcher. 4 to 6 carriers would operate in perfect rotation, 1 launching, 1 landing, 1 rearming. As the cycle repeated, the sky never went empty. They called it the cyclic operation. 9 minutes between launches, 9 minutes between strikes, a rhythm that turned war into production. A U.S. training report stated, "If we stop for 5 minutes, we lose our advantage." After Saipan, a Japanese officer wrote in his diary, "They have no heroes. They have a process." Inside every Essex-class carrier beat a technological heart. The Combat Information Center, or CIC. 3 decks below the sea line, the room glowed with the eerie light of green radar screens. Officers watched dots appear and vanish. Each a plane, each a life. When a signal faded, there was no scream, no explosion, just silence. 1 dot less, 1 man gone. A radar operator later said, "We saw death as a flicker on a screen." War, once emotional, was now mathematical. Each room a brain cell, each deck a muscle, each man a neuron in a machine made of steel. Meanwhile, at Rabaul, Japanese intelligence officers compiled a 14-page report. 1 line was underlined 3 times. "Enemy launches 100 aircraft every 9 minutes. Tokyo dismissed it. "Translation error," they said. But 2 weeks later, 3 separate sources confirmed it. That was the moment they understood. They weren't fighting a fleet anymore. They were fighting a production line. Comparisons filled the reports. Taiho, 24 months to build. Essex, 14 months. Japanese pilot training, 3 years. American replacement training, 9 months. One admiral wrote bitterly, "We are not losing to courage, we are losing to time." The Imperial Navy still held its spirit, but it could no longer match the rhythm of steel. By mid-1944, the map of the Pacific had become a constellation of airfields and blueprints. Each island taken became a gear, each Essex-class carrier a piston in motion. Every launch, every bomb, every landing, timed to perfection. The machine no longer served war, it was the war. 17 carriers advanced toward the Philippines, their decks gleaming under the sun like factory floors of destruction. Each one carried nearly 100 aircraft, each one capable of striking every 9 minutes. From above, the Pacific looked alive. a chain of moving lights across a gray sea. And beneath it all, the heartbeat of America pulsed through engines, through steel, through men who no longer fought individually, but as one living mechanism. The world had never seen anything like it, and those who did never forgot the sound. June 1944. The Western Pacific is unnaturally quiet. Clouds drift above an ocean, too still, too calm, as if the world itself is holding its breath. On the bridge of the USS Lexington, Admiral Mark Mitcher studies a weather chart under dim red light. Behind him, the hum of engines vibrates through the deck like a heartbeat. He says quietly, "They're out there, waiting." 300 miles to the west, Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa stands aboard Taiho, the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the largest, fastest carrier Japan has ever built. Through his binoculars, the horizon looks empty. He believes he has the advantage: longer-range aircraft, land-based support from Guam, and 9 fleet carriers under his command. What Ozawa doesn't know, 6 of the American carriers opposite him belong to a new class that operates on a logic he cannot comprehend: the Essex-Class. Dawn breaks over the Philippine Sea and Task Force 58 comes alive. On every flight deck, the ritual begins. Engines roar to life, wings unfold, fuel hoses hiss. Men in color-coded vests move in practice rhythm: yellow for directors, purple for fuel, red for ordnance. Each gesture is rehearsed, every shout, every hand signal, every step. The deck trembles under the combined fury of 90 aircraft preparing to launch. At 0530, the first Hellcat rolls forward. The launch officer raises his flag, the signal whip cracks, and the machine comes to life. Within 15 minutes, 40 planes are airborne. Within 30 minutes, more than 100 streak into the sky. Each ship operates in perfect rotation with the next. No chaos, no hesitation, only rhythm. To Japanese lookouts, the sight is impossible. The Americans are launching faster than they can count. Every 9 minutes, the sky thickens with new formations. A Japanese signal officer mutters almost to himself, "They are not ships, they are factories." At 0830, radar screens aboard the USS Essex light up. Hundreds of blips approaching from the west. Range, 150 miles. Altitude, 24,000 feet. Mitcher doesn't hesitate. "Launch the CAP," he orders. Within minutes, 200 Hellcats rise into the sky, guided by radio commands from the combat information centers. It's the largest air interception in history. In contrast, the Japanese formations move slowly, almost ritualistically. Pilots train for years to fly perfect formations, not fluid combat. They advance in tight, vulnerable clusters. 45 Zeros escorting 24 bombers and 8 torpedo planes. At 0940, the two forces meet. The sky explodes. Tracer fire cuts through the blue like white rain. Engines scream. One Japanese bomber bursts into flame. Another disintegrates midair. In less than 20 minutes, the formation ceases to exist. To the Americans, it feels unreal. Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer of Fighting Squadron 15 later writes, "It was like shooting targets that didn't shoot back. The Hellcats dive from the sun, their 6.50 caliber guns shredding the air. The Zeros twist and roll, but their turns are slower. Their armor too light, their fuel tanks too thin. One by one, they fall. By the time the first Japanese planes reach visual range of the American fleet, only a handful remain. Anti-aircraft batteries roar to life. 5-inch shells with proximity fuses fill the sky with invisible walls. When it's over, 42 of 69 attackers are gone. The rest retreat in flames or vanish into the sea. Aboard Taiho, Ozawa refuses to believe the numbers. His pilots radio back false reports of American losses. They claim 2 carriers sunk, 3 burning. The truth, not a single ship hit, He orders a second strike, 128 aircraft, the largest attack Japan has mounted since Pearl Harbor. At 1000 hours, radar operators aboard USS Bunker Hill detect new blips. Range 160 miles. Raid 2 inbound. Mitcher's voice is calm. Send the reserves. Fresh Hellcats, refueled and rearmed, take off within 40 minutes. A cycle that no Japanese carrier could match. 300 American fighters meet the Japanese strike head-on. The sky becomes a graveyard of smoke trails and falling wings. A U.S. pilot recalls, "They kept coming, straight and level. No evasive action. It was suicide without purpose." Of the 128 Japanese aircraft launched, 97 are destroyed. The rest scatter, out of fuel, out of hope. By noon, Ozawa has lost over half his air strength. Still, he orders 2 more raids. Most never find their targets. Many run out of fuel and ditch into the ocean. Of the 373 aircraft Japan launches that day, barely 100 return. Most are too damaged to fly again. Aboard USS Lexington, the radio room receives a short-coded message. The Turkey Shoot is over. The phrase spreads across the fleet. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. For the Americans, it's victory beyond measure. For Japan, it's the death of its carrier aviation. As the battle unfolds above, something else happens below. Inside each carrier, the machine continues its cycle. Elevators rise and fall with the rhythm of pistons. Bombs roll forward. Fuel lines drain and refill. Below the flight deck, hundreds of men move through a maze of corridors lit by red lamps. The air smells of oil, sweat, and cordite. Every man knows his role: to feed the machine. One mechanic writes in his log, "We didn't fight the enemy. We fought time." That was the secret of the Essex-Class. They could fight continuously. While Japanese crews repaired, rearmed, and regrouped, the Americans simply rotated decks and pilots. The war had ceased to be a contest of courage. It was now a contest of endurance. At 13:30, Taiho shudders. A single torpedo from the submarine USS Albacore rips through her hull. The explosion is contained? At first. But Japanese damage control is primitive. Ventilation fans spread gasoline fumes throughout the ship. Hours later, one spark ignites the vapor. The pride of the Imperial Navy erupts from within. Ozawa survives, but his command does not. By nightfall, Taiho is gone, taking with her Japan's last illusion of parity. A U.S. signal intercept records a fragment from a Japanese transmission. The sea burns. The air burns. We are finished. When dawn breaks on June 20th, the Japanese fleet is no longer a fleet, just scattered survivors drifting west. Ozawa now commands 9 carriers, reduced to fewer than 100 operational aircraft. The Americans, by contrast, have nearly 1,000. Mitcher orders pursuit. American dive bombers launch from over 200 miles away, pushing the limits of range and fuel. By nightfall, another carrier, Hiyo, is on fire and sinking. The Battle of the Philippine Sea is over. Japan has lost 480 aircraft and 3 carriers. The United States, 23 planes in combat. But the real victory lies elsewhere. It's not the battle, it's the tempo. For every Japanese sortie, the Americans launched 3. For every damaged plane, a replacement waited below deck. The Essex-Class had proven its doctrine. If you can launch faster, you cannot lose. That night aboard USS Lexington, Admiral Mitcher stands on the bridge. Below him, the sea glows faintly from burning oil, a dark mirror of victory. He watches the reflection and says softly, "This is what industry looks like when it kills." His staff doesn't reply. They simply stare at the horizon, a line of flame where the Japanese Navy once lived. At 2,200, Mitcher gives an unprecedented order. "Turn on the lights. Get our boys home." Every carrier lights its deck. Thousands of bulbs pierce the darkness as pilots return from the night strikes. The fleet becomes a constellation across the sea. a human gesture amid mechanical war. It is the one act of mercy in a day defined by annihilation. The Battle of the Philippine Sea ends Japan's ability to wage carrier war. Its remaining pilots are inexperienced, its factories shattered by American bombing. From now on, the Japanese Navy can only defend, never attack. In Washington, a memo arrives on Admiral King's desk. Enemy carrier aviation no longer an effective threat. For America, the road to the Philippines is open. For Japan, the war has entered its final, desperate phase. The Essex-Class has not just won a battle, it has rewritten the logic of naval war. Below deck, in the hangars and machine rooms, the price of victory hums in silence. Men sleep beside bombs. Mechanics rest against hot bulkheads, their faces streaked with soot and sweat. In a letter home, one sailor writes, "We don't fight people anymore. We fight minutes, deadlines, engines." He ends with a line that never reaches his family. "Sometimes I wonder if the machine still needs us." The first sound a sailor hears when stepping aboard an Essex-class carrier is not the sea, but the ship itself. A low, constant vibration hums through the steel, a pulse that never stops. Even when the engines are idle, the metal seems to breathe. Below deck, there is no night, only red lights glowing over endless corridors. Pipes twist like veins. Fuel lines hiss with a slow heartbeat. The air smells of oil, sweat, and salt. More than 5,000 men live inside this floating box of steel. They eat, sleep, and work in a space no larger than a city block. Each man a cog, each mistake fatal. When the alarm rings for launch, the entire ship shifts tempo. From engine rooms to flight decks, every man moves in sync. No words, no shouting, only the crackle of an intercom. "Prepare elevator 2, secure fuel lines. Launch, launch, launch." Above, the flight deck becomes chaos and order. Engines scream, propellers blur. Fuel teams crouch under the heat of exhaust flames. Every 9 minutes, the ritual repeats. 9 minutes of hell, 9 minutes of silence after. This is life inside the machine, and the machine never sleeps. Deep below the waterline lies the ship's inferno, the boiler deck. Temperatures reach 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is heavy with vaporized oil. Men work stripped to the waist, their skin blackened by heat and soot. They stand watch for 6-hour shifts beside roaring furnaces. The walls glow faintly red. Sweat turns to steam before it hits the floor. If a pipe ruptures, superheated steam will tear through flesh faster than a bullet. There are no survivors, only silence. One mechanic wrote in his log, "We don't hear bombs down here, only pressure." Every 2 minutes, he notes the same words. Pressure steady, temperature steady, system nominal. No mention of fear. There's no time for fear. Above them, on the flight deck, the heat is different. Dry, brutal, relentless. At noon, the steel surface burns through boots. Deck crews move bent against prop wash, shouting above the hurricane of noise. One slip, one spark, one wrong signal, and the sky erupts. A Hellcat skids on landing, slams into a row of armed bombers, and bursts into flame. Black smoke devours the deck. It takes 12 minutes to contain the fire. The report is brief. Accident, 4 missing, operations continued. There is no ceremony, no funeral. 9 minutes later, the next launch begins. War on the Essex-Class doesn't pause for the dead. 3 decks below, the Combat Information Center glows in the dark. Radar screens cast soft green halos over tired faces. Dots appear and vanish across the glass. Each a plane, each a life. When a signal fades, there is no sound. Just another mark erased from the board. A radar officer later recalled, "We watch men die as blips disappearing. No blood, No scream, just silence. Inside that room, war became mathematics. The enemy reduced to coordinates. The living and the dead separated by static. They called it the brain of the ship. But sometimes it felt more like a heart that no longer beat. Every war has a smell. On the Essex-Class, it never goes away. Burned oil, rubber, charred paint. Sometimes flesh. When a plane crashes on deck, the fire leaves behind an odor so thick, it clings to clothes for days. A machinist wrote to his wife, "At first I gagged. Now I just wipe the soot and keep working." Men learn to tell the difference. Aviation gas from hydraulic oil, smoke from men, smoke from machines. The ship breathes those smells. They linger long after the war ends. Fear aboard the Essex doesn't scream, it whispers. When the alarm air raid incoming sounds that the ship goes dark, no one speaks. Boots thud on metal. Hatches slam shut. Then impact. A bomb misses by yards, shakes the entire hull. In that moment, there is no sound except breathing. Hands clutch railings. No one prays aloud. A crewman later wrote, "The worst part wasn't the explosion. It was the silence that came after. Fear became part of the rhythm, as normal as the hum of the engines." Every launch splits the ship into two worlds. Above deck, pilots and sunlight. Below, darkness and heat. A pilot lands, his face blackened by smoke, eyes burning. As soon as his engine stops, 5 deckhands rush in. Fuel, reload, inspect, replace. No words exchanged. 12 minutes later, the same aircraft is ready, but a different man sits in the cockpit. Same machine, different soul. There are no heroes here, only shifts. A torpedo plane limps home, smoke trailing behind it. As it lands, its tailhook snaps. The aircraft spins, crashing into rows of armed bombs. Flames, chaos. Men run toward it, not away. Some push bombs overboard. Others drag fuel lines clear. Within 40 seconds, the fire is out. One report reads, "Fire controlled, deck cleared, launch resumed." 9 minutes later, the next wave departs, passing over the charred wreckage of their comrades. No pause and no mourning, only rhythm. Inside the ship, flesh and steel are indistinguishable. Men sleep beside bombs, eat beside turbines. Their pulse sinks to the vibration of engines. One sailor writes home, "At night I sleep to the sound of the ship breathing. Sometimes I think it dreams. When the engines stop for maintenance, no one can sleep. The silence is unbearable. Without the machine's hum, they feel exposed, as if the ocean itself might swallow them. Steel has become safety. Noise has become comfort. The machine has replaced God." December 1944, a bomb hits USS Lexington. The power goes out. Smoke fills the corridors. In the dark, a young electrician crawls through burning cables, searching for the main breaker. When the lights flicker back on, men look around, faces black, eyes white. No one cheers. No one speaks. A voice over the intercom, "Turn into the wind." 9 minutes later, another wave takes off. In the ship's log, one sentence, "Power restored." Launch resumed. 17 men died to turn those lights back on. Their names are not listed. The letters sent home from these ships carry no heroics, only exhaustion. "Mom, I'm fine." Every day feels like the same 9 minutes. We don't know the names of the battles anymore, just the alarms. Sometimes I dream of a deck with no one left on it. They don't write about the enemy. They write about sounds and light and metal, because that's what their world has become. By late 1944, Japan begins to send kamikaze attacks, pilots turning themselves into weapons. The men on the Essex-Class learn a new kind of waiting. No longer if they will be hit, but when. Radar operators watch blips appear too close, too fast. A Zero crashes into USS Franklin. Flames roar through the hangar deck. 724 men die. And yet, 2 hours later, the surviving crew relights the boilers. The ship moves again. A survivor writes, "We no longer knew where the ship ended and we began." They had become one organism of blood and steel. War is sound, the crack of catapults, the shriek of cables, the roar of engines. For 18 months, the Essex-Class vibrates with unending noise. Even in sleep, men hear it. In dreams, in memories, in silence. Years later, one mechanic said, "When I lay in bed, I still hear the catapult. The wind through my window sounds like the deck." The war ended. The sound did not. The machine had changed them forever. March 1945. The sea off Okinawa glows faintly under a gray sun. On the deck of USS Bunker Hill, men lie scattered between aircraft, sleeping where they collapse, heads on helmets, backs against bombs. After 3 relentless years, the rhythm of the machine has become their heartbeat. The 9-minute cycle still rules them. Launch, recover, refuel, reload, repeat. Every morning, the same hum of engines shakes the air awake. No orders needed. Bodies move on instinct. One mechanic writes in his journal, "When the ship breathes, we breathe. When it stops, I wake up in panic." The Essex-Class has no seasons, only motion, endless and mechanical. Late March. The radar screens flare with dozens of blips approaching from the south. Not in formation, not retreating, just falling toward the fleet. Kamikaze. 18-year-olds with a single task: to become the weapon. May 11th, 1945. 2 Zeros break through the clouds over USS Bunker Hill. One dives straight into the flight deck. The second follows seconds later, striking the hangar bay. The sky turns white. Fuel ignites. Explosions chain through 2 decks. More than 700 men are killed instantly. Nearly 400 more are burned or suffocated. The fire burns for 5 hours. A survivor recalls, "The sound was not of screaming. It was of steel collapsing, like the ship itself was crying. Bodies are carried to the edge and dropped into the sea. There is no time for graves. 4 days later, the fleet sails again. The log entry reads, "Casualties heavy, operations continue." The machine does not mourn. It resumes. A month earlier, USS Franklin faced its own inferno. A bomb pierced the flight deck, detonating inside the hangar. 800 dead in seconds. Flames devour everything: paint, steel, bone. But somehow the ship refuses to sink. Her engines, scorched and broken, still turn. The survivors, burned, deaf, half-blind, crawl through smoke to relight the boilers. Hours later, Franklin moves under her own power, heading home alone. The report simply states, "Severe damage. Power restored. Vessel proceeding." That line becomes legend. A ship that would not die, a deck that would not break. But beneath the myth, the truth is quieter. The ship lived. Most of her men did not. April 1945. Okinawa, the last step before Japan. The largest amphibious assault of the Pacific, and the bloodiest. 32 American ships sunk, 300 more damaged. 1,900 Japanese planes crash in suicide attacks. On the Essex carriers, crews pour water across the decks to cool the melting steel. Even the air smells like burned salt. A U.S. officer later wrote, "The sky turned the color of gasoline. When the alarms sound, no one runs anymore. They simply wait, watching for the next spark of light streaking toward them." A deckhand confides to his diary, "When a Zero dives, I don't duck. I just stare. I've already lived too long in the machine." August 6, 1945. While USS Essex drifts quietly in Ulithi Lagoon, a coded message arrives from the mainland. "Target destroyed, Hiroshima." No one understands it. They think it's a mistake. Until the photographs come. 3 days later, Nagasaki. The war is over. On deck, no one cheers. They simply stand in silence, watching the horizon where Japan once was. A pilot says softly, "We've won, but everything looks wrong." Victory feels like ash. September 1945. The Essex fleet sails into San Francisco Bay. Bands play, flags wave, families cry. But the men walking down the gangways look empty. Their faces gray, eyes unfocused. They've forgotten how to sleep in silence. The hum of the ship still echoes inside them. Some re-enlist, some drink, some never speak of the war again. One letter home reads, "We're back, but part of us is still out there, somewhere in the Pacific inside the steel." The war ends, but the carriers do not. The Essex-Class lives on. Refitted, stretched, modernized, jet decks replace catapults. Radar towers rise higher. From Korea to Vietnam, they return again and again. New wars, new pilots, same heartbeat. USS Lexington becomes a training ship. USS Yorktown turns into a museum. USS Oriskany is sunk off Florida, reborn as a coral reef. Steel does not die, it just changes shape. Beneath the waves, their bones still hum faintly like an echo from another century. Divers say they can hear it, a vibration too steady to be the sea. They call it the breathing of Essex. The United States won the Pacific War not just through bravery, but through process dash. Through the rhythm of production, the Essex-Class proved that war could be industrialized, that killing could be scheduled, and victory could be mass-produced. Japan fought with spirit, America fought with systems, and both lost something human. A historian once wrote, "Essex was more than a ship. It was the moment man learned to kill with machines faster than he could feel." On VJ Day, a young sailor watched the flag rise over the bay. He whispered, "We won with machines. Now we must learn to live like men again." No one answered him. Only the wind replied, and the soft hum of engines winding down. 80 years later, if you dive deep beneath the Gulf of Mexico, you'll find the Oriskany resting in the dark. Its flight deck is silent. Fish move through rusted hangars. Coral blooms where bombs once sat. But if you press your ear to the steel, some say you can still hear it. A faint rhythmic vibration, like a heartbeat that refuses to fade. The sound of an age when man and machine were one. The sound of a world that learned efficiency but forgot mercy. World War II ends in the textbooks with a smile. But aboard the Essex-Class, it ends in quiet. History remembers the statistics. Tons of bombs dropped, planes launched, victories won. The men remember something else, the tremor under their feet, the smell of burning oil, the look in a friend's eyes under red light. The machine won the war, but inside it, the men learned that victory and loss can sound the same.